coming together, joining forces to support families like yours to thrive and to still be okay in your home during these times of challenges, ones that were unpredictable and that are still unpredictable on a day-to-day basis. So today I'm so grateful to have Michelle Mitchell joining me. Hello, Michelle.
Hi.
Hello.
I'm loving meeting all these new people. This is just fantastic for me.
Yeah, it's exciting. So you've been dubbed the teen expert, which is amazing because I know that a lot of my client base and a lot of the audience, they do have teens, and that's definitely an area where a lot of questions are coming from because teens, are really getting into that state of independence. And now, just all of these things have just completely shifted. So
Their wings. Their
yeah,
wings are clipped.
that's right. So what I would love for you to do, first of all, for those who don't know you, is just to share a little bit about yourself and what you get to do in this world.
Okay. I started my career as a school teacher, so a classroom teacher, and I made it through 4 years, Jess. 4 years. And then I realized I wasn't quite as passionate about teaching maths and English as some of the other teachers.
Sure.
And so I actually really discovered I had this real interest in wellbeing.
Yeah.
And at the ripe age of 24, I decided I was going to change the world. And I quit teaching. I started a charity. And then for the next probably good 20 years, I built a charity. I worked with girls at risk of dropping out of education to start with small group programs, did a lot of speaking in schools, ended up having we called it the Youth Excel Centre because it was a multidisciplinary clinic. We had psychologists and social workers and counsellors and mentors all working from the same space. It was the joy of my life. And we also did on-site psychology to about 30 schools in our region. So we had 12 staff there. It was such a good place. But for the last few years, I've really focused on writing and speaking. And I feel like that's the next kind of step of how I can be most effective in the world now.
Beautiful. And so you've been a busy woman over the last couple of weeks and had a lot of interactions with families. So one thing that I am asking everybody is just what are you noticing with families that have teens at the moment? What challenges are they facing?
I think there's that real feeling that teens are going to possibly and potentially feel very lonely and isolated in this time, and helping them maintain those social connections. And I guess I've been talking to parents as well about being realistic about what tech can't do and what it can do, because we're sort of talking about tech like a cure-all at the moment. You can't see your friends, but you can go online and talk to them. And I know that's great, and it's our best plan B, but it's not going to give them the same as face-to-face does. So, it just doesn't provide what face-to-face does. And so over technology, information gets transferred, but those deep one-on-one conversations are more difficult to have online. And our boys that aren't particularly, text savvy, so they're not on social all the time, they're connecting through gaming, but there's so much that gets missed out on that. They can't fist pump their friends at sport anymore, and they can't ride their bikes. And so there's a real deficit, and loneliness is just that recognition that there's a social deficit. I think we have to be really mindful, realistic, and supportive of that area right now.
Okay. So really that social isolation seems to be the key concern with these families. So what's your first step in trying to support these families? Because families that are watching are probably feeling the same thing. So what are the first things that we need to understand other than, what you've just shared, but maybe going into more detail around that too?
Yeah, I think really validating how difficult this is for them and naming what it is, that they can't see their friends anymore and how that makes them feel, and really being honest and realistic about that without any buts, ifs, maybes, like it's really, really hard stuff, and being able to really grieve with them and help them adapt in that process. We're going to see at times our kids be really irritable and frustrated, and then maybe move to sadness and tears as they come to terms with what they're actually experiencing right now.
Mm.
So validating is a really big thing. The other thing is just reminding them that this is temporary and we're going to get through this together, and we're going to do our very, very best in a difficult situation, but keep reinforcing that this is temporary. Our teens are feeling this in some ways more than other people because they have those big, giant, overwhelming emotions. Everything's exaggerated when you're 14 years old.
That's right.
So for them, this is a big, 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 big deal, you know, and I think we have to be able to recognize that it's really going to hit some of them very hard.
Yes. And I love that you've brought that up, the fact that they are extremely emotional at the moment. They've pretty much gone back to the terrible twos, and, you know, they're experiencing this on a much larger scale. So I guess for parents that are finding these big emotions really difficult to handle, I guess, what are teens trying to communicate through those big emotions?
Yeah. Well, when we all get anxious, we don't just look anxious on the outside. We get angry and we get irritable, and, you know, emotions don't fly solo, do they? They come in packs and clusters. And when we're feeling our young people feel very moody or disengaged or, you know, angry or frustrated over the littlest things at the moment, we really, really do need to recognize that that's probably underlying and birthed in some anxiety at the moment. And the capacity that we have right now there to react in a really meaningful way in their life is really important. I talk about soft and close a lot in my work. So trying to confront a young person head on when they're in the heat of that emotional moment is going to create the biggest explosion.
Yes.
And I think parents at the moment, they are actually quite distracted by their own stuff. Not everyone's watching Netflix on the couch. There's a lot of people working double time in their businesses right now, and they are carrying, parents, adults are carrying a lot of stress as well. So we have to realize that stress meeting stress is going to cause an explosion. So it's our opportunity as adults, I guess, is just to take that breath. Let a lot slide just for a second here. Yeah, let a lot slide. And then in that moment, your number one job, like, I know we're multitasking in our minds, but our number one job is actually to land that stress plane and to bring the calm. Yeah. And however you do that, parents, I really don't care at the moment. Like, just don't mess with it too hard and follow your intuition for your family. I think so many parents at the moment are reaching out for affirmation and confirmation about what they're doing. And I keep reflecting back to them, what do you think the right thing to do is for your situation? Because we're all feeling this very differently.
Yes.
People's circumstances are differently. Some kids are lonely to start with, so this is compounding it. Some kids are anxious to start with, and this is compounding it. And then we've got kids without a lot of technology. We've got such diversity of situations there. So however's going to land that plane for your family, and dropping all else and doing that is super, super important. And you might say something to your young person and just say something to them, like if they're just really angry and moody, and go, it's pretty tough right now, isn't it? And just acknowledging it, and just breathe with it a little bit, and maybe you get an opportunity to talk to them a little bit more in depth later on.
And I think, you know, connection really is that key point between parent and teen. You know, there's a lot going on in their mind. So for families, there's all this extra time now, right? And it's an opportunity if you choose to take it on as one. But how do you connect with a teen where sometimes, as you know, right, teen boys, how are you going? Good. I
got two.
Yeah. So
Nigel later said something this week, Jess, that I just loved. I wanted to shout it from the rooftops. So I'm having so many parents tell me, oh, my teenager's sleeping in and they want a game until 1 a.m, and then they're not getting up till 11. And I can hear this frustration because they want routine. And Nigel said, you know what? Some parents with little kids right now would kill to get their kids to sleep.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they're thinking about it. Yeah.
Some truth in that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, you forget about all those times, right, as your child gets older, because the challenges change year after year after year. So what does a teen require for connection then? How do you connect with a teen brain?
That's a really, really good question. Let me think of the best way to answer that. Okay. Teenagers become quite self-focused, don't they? That's the truth of it. And the capacity we have as adults in those years to be very sacrificial and to almost put our agendas aside and connect with them first, instead of continually barking our agendas with them and trying to motivate them to stick to the schedule that we've actually created. Yeah. They have this different set of needs during those teenage years. And if we can tap into and find some common ground with those needs and actually really appreciate how much those things need to them, I think that just can go a long way. I mean, it might not like TikTok, but there is something that happens when an adult takes the moment to be in a young person's world that's actually irreplaceable. There's just those bonds that get created. And if you want to get the best out of a young person, spend 10 minutes doing what they want to do first, and then tell them to go and have a shower and brush their teeth.
Yes. That's so beautiful.
Unfortunately, no matter how much you buck that, during those teenage years, it is how it is, and yes, they're going to have glimmers of moments of maturity, and there's going to be some, give and take within all of that. But baseline is you really have to step inside their world.
Yeah. And I've had, a couple of clients this week say that they've just sat down and played the Xbox or whatever with their child and with their young person, and that it has made all the difference, that there is that different level of connection. I remember when I was a teen, we would sit, we'd have 4 bean bags and we would play Nintendo 64, back in those days, and play that with Dad. And that was the best connection time. He was in our world, we were having fun together as a family, and that's how we connected.
And who knows how much effort that took, that dad, or your dad as well. Like as a parent now, I know the effort it takes sometimes to get out of my work mode and actually sit in something that in my world is quite trivial, but in their world it's the center of their universe. And so just to be able to, my son redid his bedroom a little bit this week, and so to put down a few hours and to do the shop and to do the thing and come back, and he set it up and he's set now for his self-isolation, but it just takes time and it takes effort, and there's no way around it. Strong family bonds cost you something. They're not free. They cost you something. And every time that you actually, don't back at a kid when you go, hey, I can put you in your place. Every time you actually use that self-control, it costs you something, but it's worth it in the long run.
Yeah. I like that point very much. And so you said at the start that you had, experience in the learning and the education sector with teens and whatnot. So, these teens are now having to learn from home, and, there could be a lot of resistance. There could be some teens that are all for it, love learning, and, they're disappointed that they're not getting it.
Yeah.
So what in your experience helps that journey to educate at home with the parents? I mean, what's required?
Yeah. And the responses I'm feeling out from teenagers are so different. I talked to my checkout chick at Coles, and she's in grade 12, and she said, I'm just so anxious. But she said, I'm not actually anxious that I can't do the work. So she obviously is quite bright, but she said, I'm worried about my motivation. And then you get some others that are like, school wasn't a happy place for me. I am so happy in my room doing this alone.
Yes.
Then you got other young people who really struggle with learning. So the diversity there is real. So parents, tune into your intuition with your kid. Yes. But probably what I can say overall is this is going to find its balance. And I want parents and young people to lean into the fact that there are some really big minds on the job right now. Like really big minds, and they can see the gaps and they're working on it the best they can. For most year levels, it is not going to be the end of the world if they miss 3 months of school.
Yes.
It really isn't. And we keep banging on, Jess, about, it's not about kids' marks, it's about their resilience. And, what kids don't know these days is the basics of life. And all of a sudden, we've got this opportunity to actually put maybe the high priority on education to the side.
Yes.
Actually engage with them on some stuff that we think matters as a family. And home is going to be the hero right now. We're going to step up to the plate with our intuition, with that sense of responsibility for our children, and we're going to make sure they get what they need right now. And that's what they need from us.
Yeah.
And look, if education becomes a second priority for a minute, or a third,
Yeah.
or a fourth,
Yeah.
maybe that in the scope of things is going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that you've brought that up, because I guess there's no adult in this world that ever needs to look backwards and will come to, oh, well, it was all those months I didn't do my homework that has really stuffed up my life right now. It's always around that connection time within the home, and how was my relationship with my parents, and how was I understood as a child and as a teen. I mean, these are really the key things that need to be focused on. And this is where we get to release all of those other expectations. And I love what you've just said, meeting your child where they're at right now.
Yeah.
Because if we get to uncover that, then you might actually get to uncover what's been preventing them from learning in the school environment anyway. What needs are not being met there? What needs are not being met in the home that are not allowing that?
And it gives us a chance to face our stuff, you know. We're all going to have bad hair days. We're going to have days where our emotions are, you know, we're all going to have that. When home doesn't have to be perfect, it can be really messy at the moment, but it can still create the memories that our kids are going to look back and say, hey, what's the lessons that we want our kids to really learn in this moment? I want my kids to learn that we can live on less than we used to.
Yeah.
Oh, I want my kids to learn that, you know, like if, you know, if no one else is around, your family's going to be there. There's so many powerful lessons right now. And I think that only after we emerge will we recognize how big a time this actually was.
Yeah.
And I think our kids are going to come out of this more gracious. They're going to come out of it wiser. They're going to come out of it more grateful. But for right now, our job is to hold them and to teach them like only a parent can, not a teacher, like only a parent can.
That's right. Exactly. And so what have been, you know, you have experience in this realm, which is so beautiful, and it would serve you well with your own teens. And so what is helping?
18.
Yeah. Okay. So what, I guess for you, what is helping you, or what did help you through those teen years that you needed to apply, and maybe you needed to be reminded of too, because we do get our own emotions?
I talk about it in two ways, okay? We need to recognize exactly where young people are at. Well, this was what happened for me anyway. And I try with my boys, you know, recognize exactly where they're at and realize that right now we're in a very adaptive process. So where they're at in the process this week, and it is a lot of grief they're processing, and they're adapting to a new way of living. So there's going to be phases of this. I'm trying to write about this now.
Yeah.
Being in that moment and validating how hard that is, but also being able to reach in and pull out their potential. And that's a skill. That's an art, especially when your teenager's a bit negative or they're rolling their eyes at you every 2 seconds. But just say, hey, I can see some courage in you, or I think you can do this, or let's get creative together, or what's the best ways for you to connect with your friends right now, and making sure those baseline needs are met, but pull it out of them. Pull out of them what their awareness of where they're at, and pull out of them some really insightful answers for themselves. Their potential right now and their purpose through this is so important. They need to help. They actually need to feel like they've got some kind of ownership and power. And I know I see adults doing this. They're creating schedules. And if I followed that schedule, my life would fall into a heap. I mean, it's just every 5 minutes I'm looking at some of these schedules on Facebook going, we haven't scheduled in, you know, processing emotion. We haven't scheduled in grief. We haven't scheduled in a bad day. There's no schedule for the full process of this thing. But it's our desire to control something. If I put in a schedule, it's all going to be okay, you know. And I think for our young people to be able to give themselves room to breathe and be really gracious with each other at the moment would be just my advice. Let's be gracious with teachers. Teachers, be gracious with parents. Not assume we know the best for everybody, but actually really champion the voice of parents within this.
Yeah. Thank you. And for you, in your experience, Michelle, what What would you say is the biggest resistance factor of parents when they are resisting the behavior of a teen, or they're resisting their processes and, you know, everything they're going through, right? Because I have many clients and what they're saying, they don't shower, they don't do this. I told them to pack the dishwasher 10,000 times. They don't listen to me. They don't talk to me. Why are parents resisting all that and trying to come over with nothing but control all of the time?
I think it's two things. I think it's fear. We're afraid they're going to turn, like listen to the stories we tell ourselves. You know, if they go to that party, they're going to smoke pot and then get pregnant, and then they'll end up and do, you know, like, and this is a real thing. When we get going as parents, the stories we tell ourselves, and I sometimes have to say to parents, what's the worst thing that can happen here? Like, and is that true?
Yes.
I mean, is that true? What's the likelihood of that? Because we hype ourselves up with fear.
Yes.
The other thing, I think it makes us feel very insecure. And parents lose their confidence. They've gone from this stage where their kids are in this stage of dependence and still like giving them love heart letters and telling them that their best lasagna is the best in the world. And they get so much positive feedback when their kids are little. And it's, "Mummy, I love you." You look at a teenager, they're not saying "I love you" anymore. They're giving you no feedback, if negative feedback, and that does something for the soul unless we can keep perspective, unless we can recognize that this is a specific stage and the playbook's changed, you know, the rules changed, and we've got to roll with that a little bit, and we can find that they don't hate us, like maybe that comes out of their mouth occasionally, but they actually are just really annoyed right now. Sometimes even really annoyed at us because they're striving for their independence that they're maybe not quite big enough to grasp hold of.
Perfect. I think that'll resonate with a lot of parents, and let us know if it is, and let us know what you're thinking, feeling right now, and if you have any questions. So you have written quite a few, you know, you've got books and you've got information out there, Michelle. And what do you feel like parents seek the most from you, I guess, you know, and those I'm sure would be the books that you have written. So what information is most needed? They're
like, so what do I do?
This is great.
I get the problem, you know, everyone's talking about the research, so what do I actually do? You know, You know, so my child's anxious, what do I actually do? You know, my child's, you know, just moody or disrespectful right now, or what do I actually do? And, you know, they're real things that all parents along the journey need to be able to just get some extra tools every now and again. I find a little bit of information when it's targeted right goes a long way. You don't have to know this much. You just have to know the right thing at the right time.
Yes. And for you, I guess, where do you find those right pieces of information?
Oh, look, obviously I read a lot. When you've been doing it for 20 years, you observe what works. And I think what parents give me feedback on what works, they're the things I tend to recite more than anything else. You know, and probably, you know, you pick up, and sometimes you see things in a different light as you get older in your career as well. Like when my kids were teenagers, I probably thought very differently than I think now. I'm a little bit more relaxed now than even I was 10 years ago, because you realize that it is a phase and a stage. And at the end of the day, your connection with your child means more than anything. You can be arguing about things that you thought were going to have a life-changing impact, and you were very afraid of, when actually, in fact, they grew out of that quite quickly, and it didn't have the impact that you feared it would.
Yeah, thank you. And because your children are that bit older, they are 18 and 21. You know, it's
school, so we're just out of school.
So it's really, I think it's really nice to hear that from you, because you have gone through that phase. Were there any other big learnings or reflection points that you had since now that they're that age and those ages?
I think not so much my own kids, but when I worked with young people that didn't have engaged, connected families, it just reaffirmed over and over and over again that no one can replace a parent's role in a child's life, and how parents obviously sometimes think they're doing the crappiest job, and they beat themselves up, and mums have this list of all these things that they think they're doing wrong. And look, there's nothing like a teenage girl to make you feel like this tall, you know, especially when you get dressed and you thought you looked good and then they tell you you don't. So I understand it. But if they had have walked the journey with some of the kids that I've been with and seen them void of parents, when their kids say, Mum, you're doing a crap job, or, you're the worst mum in the world, or whatever, your internal dialogue as a mum needs to say, but you don't know Ashlyn's parents, alcoholics who don't show up, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's perspective.
Yeah.
It's just perspective. And sometimes we need to really encourage ourselves as parents.
Yeah. And I think that really leads into, your own work as a parent, right? And just really finding what works for you, really that self-care process as well, really important to undertake.
Yeah. And I've found that you don't have to be perfect as a parent. You just have to be honest. You have to be connected, and your kids have to see that you care and you're trying when you get it wrong. Saying sorry to my kids has probably been the best thing that I've ever done over the years. Asking their opinion about things and actually really listening, even if I don't agree with it. Sometimes when I disagree with my boys intensely about something, and I bring my kids up to have an opinion and to be strong, but sometimes we don't see eye to eye. And I'll often just stop during those times, and you're not going to solve it there and then. And I'll say to them, I need a hug. And what it's doing is just grounding everything on what matters. And oftentimes they'll, oh, Mum, walk over, flick their massive arms around me because they look like men now. Oh, Mum, give me a big hug. I'll say, look, let's just talk about this later. I just need a hug, They're there, Mum. But it's grounding things on what matters. Landing that stress plan when you need to, knowing when to push and what's important and what's not, and tuning into the intuition that you've got to do those things.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. And I really liked the other day, Zoe Martin was talking from her perspective, and one of the things that she says to herself all the time is, okay, how fast can I return to love right now in this moment 100%. Or today, in whatever conflict or whatever disagreements that have been going on in the home, whatever stress, because the second that you return to love, then what you're sharing is you're returning back to what's important.
And even when you're arguing with kids and you say, I love you, and they go, yeah, but that's not the issue, which I really love hearing, because they're like, I know you love me. Like, it's deeper than all this. It's deep, deep, deep. I know that, Mum. You don't have to keep saying that, I love that. I get concerned at the moment for young people who may have already been struggling with their mental health as well. I wrote a book on self-harm. So if parents need a resource around that area at the moment, that's definitely one. But we want to really be looking after our kids' mental health at the moment and really encouraging them to do so. Friends looking after friends. Young people need to look after each other and show up for each other right now, and actually be prepared to step over that confidentiality line sometimes and actually talk to a teacher or a parent if they are really concerned about one of their friends, because they're the ones that are so good at actually identifying distress in each other.
Yes.
They know the changes.
Yes.
When a friend withdraws unusually, they know those things. When, even their sleep changes and their friend might be messaging them at 3 a.m. in the morning when they normally don't. It's signs like that I want young people to be really mindful of at the moment and really show up for each other.
Yeah. And I'm really glad that you brought that up, Michelle, because, self-harm can be a really scary word for parents and a scary thought. And I know myself, I've certainly worked with many parents, previously and currently, that is an issue for now. So, I would like to touch on that serious nature of the mental health in the teen world briefly. So what do parents need to know in that realm? What is going to help that situation for them and their teen at the moment?
The biggest thing is when parents get afraid and they almost shut down the acceptance that this is actually happening. They just shut it down. They don't present themselves as available and open for their young people to ask for help or ask questions. They actually their kids know that actually letting their parents know that they're struggling is going to trigger off this chain of events. And for some families, they prefer to sweep it under the carpet. For other families, it's so heightened in what it produces, anxiety in them, that they don't want to talk about it. But the most powerful thing that we can actually do with young people right now in this moment is actually make sure they know, and keep building those pathways where there is nothing that they can't come and talk to you about. There is nothing too big. There's nothing too scary. There's nothing that together you can't find answers for. That a lot of these things are manageable and treatable as well. But the baseline of it has got to be open communication. And even if it's tough, even if these are really tough things to talk about, it actually empowers learning and growth when young people can name it and they can come to their safe haven, their safe place to start that growth process going. Otherwise, all we're doing is shutting down growth. And every struggle, every mistake, everything that young people go through that sometimes parents wish to God they didn't have to go through, I want parents to realise that that actually can be the building blocks for amazing things in their kids' lives.
Absolutely.
Some of those biggest mistakes, some of those biggest challenges, some of those deepest pits, actually, if they can be the launch pad for learning and growth, can actually be the making of them.
Completely.
And so if we can have that mindset going into it and recognise that, telehealth is available. Psychologists are working overtime on this. There's some great connection programs coming up from young people, but there are steps forward. It's not quick and it's not easy, but there's steps forward.
And I think the whole theme through this, which I think is perfect, Michelle, is it doesn't matter who your child is and what they're going through. It's the core foundation is really that connection and that acceptance of your teen. That's really the most important thing. And especially if they're going through something like self-harm or thoughts of that nature, or those scary thoughts that they're scared of too. And when they know that you're going to be fearful as a parent, they will withhold that, because it's our innate nature as a child to make sure our parents are okay and please them.
And it's important to be honest. It's not that they have to hide the fact that it makes them anxious, but I think it's that concept that we're in this together, and I'm not going to overreact to the point that it shuts down or even eggs up your anxiety. So it's just realizing that, parents, you are your child's greatest advantage at the moment.
Absolutely.
What you do and what you say actually really does matter. It does matter. And those moments that are really tough, that you have to dig deep to actually respond in a thoughtful, intentional way, could actually be those pivotal points in kids' lives that actually just make such a difference. This will be a pivotal time in a lot of young people's lives.
Absolutely.
I want to be a part of the journey of that for my kids. I want them to look back and go, hey, during that time, these are my greatest memories. This is what I learnt,
Yeah. And we've got the time to do that now.
So we've work and everything else.
That's right. Yeah. The 20-hour days for some of us. So I think we've covered absolutely beautifully the must-haves and the must-dos for teens. And I think it's always helpful to know the do-nots and the things that we do need to try and avoid as well. It's helpful to have that combination in our brain. So for you, what are just the absolute do-nots, because this is not going to serve you and your teen one little bit?
Too high expectations right now is going to be a killer for your relationship. Okay. Judgments about possibly what time they're getting up or how much they're doing, all the rest of it, it's going to be a killer right now. Okay. Transferring your stress and agenda on them in a forceful way is going to create a lot of resistance right now. So it's those things, I think, if we can just keep an eye on them. It's not like they're never going to happen, Jess. Let's be realistic. I mean, I'm oozing out in stress sometimes, and then I've got to go, I can see it ripple out in my home.
Yes.
It's like, okay. I'm better off going by myself and actually really taking a few good, really deep breaths, letting my lungs talk to my head and say it's okay. And I think that's really important. Don't minimize their emotions too, is probably one thing I would say.
Yep.
And maybe within that, don't stop having important conversations like about gratitude and about them lifting their weight and contributing. So it's all a balance to me.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you. And as we slowly wrap up a little bit, Michelle, I want to make sure that we've covered everything of importance from your perspective in this field. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you feel like is really important for parents to understand at the moment, but also in the future too with their teens?
Yeah, it's hard to compare in the future with at the moment. So let's stick with at the moment because it's so different.
Perfect.
But anything they can do to boost those positive neurochemicals right now, which is outside time together, exercise, physical touch, deep conversations, any of those things that can really boost the mental health of their young people right now is really important. I'm writing a blog on adaptation, and I would love parents to really read it because I feel like as this journey goes on, young people are going to need different things at different times. And right now we're plugging the holes, a little bit like our government, like phase 1 is done. We're into phase 2. I think it's a little bit like that. Like we've been plugging the holes. We've been battening down the hatches. We've been making sure we've got our toilet paper, making sure I've got pasta in the house.
That's right. Yeah.
Doing all that. But phase 2 is going to kick in. And as it does, some of those deeper emotions are going to be the ones we're going to be processing with our young ones.
Thanks for those tips, Michelle. And for people that do want more information from you and about your books or blogs, everything, where is the best place for them to go?
MichelleMitchell.org. There's a whole lot of free resources on there, just blogs and different links at the moment. And if they need resources, I've got a resource for tweens on resilience, like a book they can have, resources for parents, but also the self-harm area. Let's make sure that parents challenged with those circumstances while being at home, I've got some support as well. Yeah,
perfect. So I like to finish off with 2 questions, Michelle. So
what is that question?
First question is, I guess for you personally, what have been the opportunities that have come up in the last couple of weeks for you? What have been the absolute beautiful outcomes and experiences that you would never have gotten if all of this craziness didn't happen?
I've met so many more people reaching out for podcasts and even different media interviews.
Yeah.
And it's actually been really nice. I didn't know so many people knew I existed. I'm like, that's really nice. I never knew that you actually knew.
Yeah, sure.
It's actually really kind of almost validating that people want to have a conversation with you about something so important. So it's been really nice meeting people, and it's really nice connecting on a workspace as well.
Beautiful. And for you, Michelle, what does a happy home look and feel like?
I know. It's everyone being able to be themselves and be comfortable being themselves.
Yeah, I love that.
Where they're at right there at that moment of their life.
Yeah.
And their personality and their development and everything.
Yeah. I love that. And that's certainly full self-expression is certainly really a big value of mine too. Thank you for sharing. And I'm so grateful to have you on here, and I just think you're brilliant. And I know a lot of parents are going to get a lot of value out of what you've shared today. If just releasing some of that pressure and giving some solid tips on how to move forward with their teens. So thank you so much for being a part of this and saying yes.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks, Jess. It's just lovely to meet you as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Any questions, everyone, make sure you pop it in the comments and we definitely will get to them. But otherwise, I hope you have a really good afternoon. We've got 2 more episodes this afternoon, one at 1 p.m, one at 5 p.m. So don't forget to tune into those. And Michelle, I hope you have a beautiful afternoon too.
My pleasure. Busy lady. Hey?
Yeah, I know. Just doing lots of talking, lots of connecting.
Nice.
Bye, everyone.